major tournaments I did last year, I was like, we were fine. We didn't do spectacularly, but that sort of didn't enter our consideration to how good we were at debating. It's just sort of useful data. So don't let stuff like your defeats define how well you do. And as long as you keep moving forward and keep debating, you are guaranteeing that you have a chance to win. That's thing number one. Thing number two, it doesn't matter what color the cat, what the color of the cat is, as long as it catches mice. So what I mean by that is, there is something to be said about sounding really fluffy and really nice, but at the end of the day, that's not essential for doing very well. And something that a lot of debaters, I think, miss is they do the same thing each debate. So there are a lot of otherwise really, really good debaters that have a really strong set style that's really lovely, maybe lovely to listen to, but it's not very adaptable to the circumstances of the debate. And the best way to ensure you do strategy well is to adapt it to what this particular debate needs. And some debates will require you to really heavily characterize stuff. Some debates will require you to prove something, without any shred of doubt. And what you need to do is recognize what the debate wants from you and to adapt. And the worst thing that you can do, even if you're incredibly good, is stick to what's safe and what you know. Experimentation will make you better, and in often cases, it will help you win as well. And then lastly, don't play to lose. So there are a lot of novice debaters I see who see one big dog debater who's on the other team, and you can see that the other debater's got some wrinkles on their face because they're a sick year or something cringe like that. And they come into the debate and they're like, all right, we're gonna lose this one, that's okay. No, I wanna be as serious as possible about that. Any debate can be won and any debate can be lost. And here I will start with a bit of a self-deprecating story that I hope everyone can indulge me in, which was a debate I did while I was in high school in year 11 for the Premier's Debating Challenge, which is sort of a very, very fun, very silly competition. And we did a debate against a combined team from Rose Bay High School of a year 8 and 2 year 10s. And we're sprightly year 11s and 12s. So we walk into the debate and we're like, okay, we're going to destroy this team. And we come out of the debate and we think we did. And we are waiting for our chair to come up. And the chair doesn't say anything because they've been rolled, which is the lovely Jeremiah Edith Barney, by the two other panelists in the room who've given the debate by a close but clear margin to the team of the 2 year 10s and the year 8. And we were, I think, very, very shocked. But that story should have sort of two things to take away. The first of which is heartening, which is you can beat anyone. Regardless of how good someone is, regardless of how much you hear about how good someone is, every debate is a new opportunity to do very well. But the second lesson is that anyone can beat you. So never get sort of too hung up on how good you are, never take anything for granted, at least for me. Never relax into feeling competent or complacent, because ultimately, at any point, you can be toppled. So go hard, don't go home. All right. I'll move into, the next thing I wanted to foreground is, I think these are actually 3 very good rules pertaining to debating. They're from a recent movie called The Apprentice, which is about Donald Trump. I put them there because I just thought this would be entertaining. You're welcome to take from this what you wish. I don't want to tell people to debate like Donald Trump, that's probably bad. But hopefully the sound will play. Okay, it's playing from my computer, oh no. Hold on, we can do this. Okay. If it doesn't play, you can check it out in your own time. Okay, it's, you know what, I will just describe.
Can you move the microphone?
Oh, so hard. Okay, bear with me.
I got 3 rules, and they're my 3 rules of winning. Rule 1, the world is a mess. Okay? The world is a mess, Tony. You have to fight back. You have to have a tough skin. Attack, attack, attack. If somebody comes after you with a knife, you shoot him back with a bazooka. Okay? Rule 2, what is truth, Tony? What is truth? You know what's truth? What you say is truth, what I say is truth, what he says is truth. What is the truth in life? Deny everything and do nothing. You know what's true? What I say is true. And third of all, most important, no matter how fucked you are, you never, ever, ever admit defeat. You always win victory. Whoa.
Alright, hopefully those, at least some of you will have noticed that that is a pattern in a lot of debates. Never admit defeat, always claim victory, there is no truth. Those are useful strategies of winning debates, and they do work in a lot of cases. I myself have always told the truth in all debates. But yeah, so if you take nothing away, those are 3 lessons. Oh, it's just going forward to video. Those are 3 lessons. Hopefully they're useful. All right. First level of strategy, skirmishes. So individual clash level strategy, the like really nitty gritty stuff. This is the stuff that's applicable in the lowest level strategy of trying to win one individual clash. Oh yeah, and everything will be themed in terms of battles, and I've got some artwork here that hopefully will be fun. All right, so how to do well in an individual clash. The first thing that I think is useful to think about, and I've got sort of different ways to do it, but the first thing that you should be thinking about directly from prep is trying to win the clash before it starts. So what I mean by that is weaponizing, setup, and characterization. So the thing that is often forgotten by a lot of people is that the first few minutes in the first affirmative and first negative speeches are sort of taken as gospel by the adjudicator, who will just sort of trust whatever setup first affirmative does, whatever definitional ability first affirmative has. And the reason that that's awesome is that it's really useful, because it means that you can set the terms and set the tone. So what you want to think of very deliberately in prep is questions like, where will this be done? How will this be done? Are there any examples I can think of? And then, other questions, I think one that is useful is, who wants this? If this was a policy, realistically, how would it play out in this current administration, with these current governments, with these corporations? Chuck the real world into debates, and it will enliven a lot of your arguments. Yeah.
Can you give an example of what you mean by a clash?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, sometimes, I guess I've listed a debate up there. Which was a debate at Easters last year, which was very fun. It was about this lovely thing called Veritasium, which is just a liquid that makes you tell the truth. And it's we prefer a world where this is in the water supply, so everyone tells the truth. And in that debate, I think it's very nebulous, what's going on. How would this world develop? What would institutions be like? What would governments be like? How would politicians do anything? How does this affect minorities? And so each of those are very important characterization questions, but they also can become clashes later. So a clash in the debate might be something like, which side, which side has more accountable politicians, or something like that, or on which side does economic policy get done more. Just an idea where both sides are contributing something. And the best way that you can deal with that is by working out very early in prep exactly what the other side is going to try and do, and then get around it. So the second way of dealing with individual clashes that I think can be quite useful as a sneaky strategic thing is comparative. So comparative is essentially just what we would otherwise do absent of this policy, what is going on. And I've listed 2 examples that are there that I want to pause on and talk about, because they're good examples of how explaining what might otherwise happen can be really potent as an idea. So the first example is the 2021 Australs Grand Final, where the topic was, in countries with ethnic tensions, we support cultural appropriation. So the beginning of the debate plays out a little bit like this. Affirmative goes, cultural appropriation is very good, makes people very happy, they probably know more about one another, etc. And then side negative is well, actually no, cultural appropriation is very bad, makes people very angry, they dislike one another, right? And at that point, we have a reasonable stalemate of arguments and characterization. The way that third affirmative tries to get around this, and to very strong extent, is to say, look, you can discuss all you want about whether or not cultural appropriation is good or bad. We're just going to explain that absent of cultural appropriation, if those cultures didn't try and appropriate one another, they would clash and come into conflict, which is obviously bad, as opposed to cultural appropriation, which is nebulous as to whether or not it's good or bad. So you can see how that is an explanation of what might otherwise happen that is really sneaky and sort of strategically gets around whatever the other team is trying to do. And so this is something that I think is, in particular, very persuasive whenever a team is making an argument that is true and good. And obviously, as we get into a bit later, those arguments are really difficult to respond to or deal with because it's like, well, yeah, it's probably true, it's probably good, maybe cultural appropriation is bad. But if you can explain a whole different territory and be like, well, actually, we're not talking about whether or not cultural appropriation is good or bad. We need it as a stalwart against what might have otherwise taken place. It can be a very easy way to sideline whatever the other team is trying to do and make a bunch of their efforts sort of somewhat meaningless. The second example I'll give is from a debate I did at Easters last year, where it is very important to think about whatever the counterfactual, comparative, countermodel, whatever else is going to happen in the debate. And the topic was that as Marvel Studios, we would bring Iron Man back from the dead, so that we would resurrect him. And we were on Affirmative, we won the debate, we were very happy with it. We were just like, well, you know, what we do is we bring him back, everyone would be very happy, he would make Marvel a lot of money, they'd be very happy with that. And Iron Man makes a bunch of money. And we spent a bunch of our time in prep just explaining why you need Iron Man to make a bunch of money. And then Side Negative gets up and they explain, well, we're not going to bring Iron Man back from the dead. We're going to have a multiverse version of Iron Man appear. And everyone in the room sort of like somewhat rolls their eyes. But you can see how now the debate is not about like Iron Man or no Iron Man. It's resurrected Iron Man versus multiverse Iron Man, which is a very different debate to be having. So you really need to adapt on the fly to that, which is why I think the thing that you want to constantly be thinking, and the thing that a lot of novices get wrong pretty immediately, or the easiest way to stand out, is to just establish what are we comparing this topic to. If we have set up our world as to why, you know, cultural appropriation is good or bad, or Iron Man coming back is good or bad, what is the thing that we're comparing to absent of that? And that can be really, really useful in terms of making sure that we're explaining a claim that is sticky in the debate and stays there and doesn't sort of fade away and is sort of strong against those sorts of attacks. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about responses directly. So I think especially for people who are just coming into debating, hopefully this will be useful. For everyone else, there's a photo of a dog next to a sign that says no dog, which I think is funny. Okay, so the big thing to do when thinking of responses, the question that a lot of people never ask is, what should I respond to? And this question is often far more important than how do I respond to stuff, because to be honest, responding to stuff's not that hard. Like anyone can do it. Any like 4-year-old can say nah. Right? Like, it's not that difficult to do. So the question that you need to ask yourself, and the question that constantly should be going through your mind whilst you're in a debate is, what is the most threatening attack that we get from this other team? Or what is the most resounding point that they've made that will stick with the adjudicator? What do I really, really need to kill? And so making that judgment call is one that you should spend more of your mental bandwidth making. But then, if you have correctly picked what to rebut, and generally, like the other team will hopefully flag what they think is the most important because they'll spend a bunch of time on it. Here are a few ways you can go about doing that. Firstly, just go through what needs to be true for this argument to be believed. So, is there a set burden of proof? Is there a tipping point where this would happen? What are the forces that might push against this argument to stop it from happening? Secondly, I think this is the thing that so many people forget, just calling BS on arguments, just being like, this is not true, especially people who are younger, just getting into debating. I think they find this response so difficult to make, which is quite sad. I will go into a brief tangent of a debate I did with, a debate I coached with someone, where I just sort of like spoon-fed them the topic, that we should have more soldiers. And I said, well, look, one of the sides in this debate is going to make the argument, well, actually, if there are more soldiers, we would have more war, and more war is really good. And I was like, okay, that seems like a very easy argument to rebut. If we have more soldiers, there'd be more war. Seems like a bit of a spurious argument. And this speaker, his rebuttal was like, okay, we're going to flip that and prove that we get more war on our side. And I said, no, just say war is bad, right? Like, it's not that complicated to do. So making the decision on how you should rebut something, and just taking the path of least resistance. Like, don't overcomplicate what you're doing. It's not too difficult. You can do all of those strategies. You can explain why maybe you get more of the other team's benefit on your side, etc. So that's how you rebut stuff. This is like a clash level strategy. Either give better arguments, make them more plausible in characterization, or explain a better comparative from the other team, or just rebut their argument and make it clear that your one should win on the clash. Or just pick the right clash to win on. All of those are, I think, individual ways you can go about winning clashes that are probably pretty useful. Okay, second part, campaigns. So round level strategy. This is strategy broader than just like one individual clash. It's how does all of that come together within the campaign of the round. So there are a few questions that we should ask, and we'll go into some of the strategies. I've given each of them a little character on the right. So the first question that you should ask is, what does this judge want from me? Because in a lot of cases, context is particularly important as for what you should do. So in some cases, sometimes you just need to wake your judge up, right? Like, you need to stand up there and be the first team to give a whole lot of rhetoric that's really powerful. Or sometimes a debate will be really confusing, and you can look at your adjudicator and they're wearing a shirt that says hello, I'm a first year, please help me. And so my thought is, I need to make this debate far more simple than it otherwise is. So understanding the context is very, very important in terms of what we're actually doing in the debate. What are they likely to care about? And I like to spend a lot of the time, whenever I'm not actively writing anything down, just like eyeing down my judge. Like, what are they nodding to? What are they writing? What are they not writing? How are they thinking? And trying to get a good sense of how they're, like, the pendulum of whether or not they're going aff or neg, which way it's swinging. So if anyone has ever judged me before, sorry for looking at you, but it's genuinely very helpful. You want to know what's going on. Yes?
How do you make that decision as to where the pendulum is swinging?
That's a good question.
Write it down? Like, nodded to that, did not nod to that, did not.
Oh, I generally don't like to, I've got too much to write that I'm not I wish I had time to write what individually they nodded to, but generally, as I'm going through, I'm keeping a mental note of it, and then you want to have a set, it depends on how you organize your notes, but I like to have, set space where I'm writing down content that they have that I think is dangerous, and if the adjudicator is nodding, I'll probably mark it as extra dangerous. And then whenever I've got a fresh second and I'm not doing anything, it's dealing with each of those things that I think could be dangerous in the round and bringing them into whatever I'm doing, or trying to think of a way to get around it, or some way of getting through that material. So yeah, keeping note of it I think is useful, but generally you want to try and you want to keep it front of mind. And sometimes I also think that writing too much can also be bad. So if you're writing everything the other team says, odds are you're doing something wrong. Because in a lot of cases, if you've heard an adjudicator, they won't say everything the team said. You can generally get by with just whatever the core claim they're making is, and then maybe one or two mechanisms that are pertinent or you think are useful. Sometimes a claim will be really contingent on its mechanisms, and then it is very useful to note it down. But otherwise, sometimes it's obvious why something's true, and it's more about how you individually try and deal with it rather than going through every single thing I've said. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. The second question that you should ask is, how are we going to win, and how are we going to make it clear that we've won? Because those are two very separate tasks that you should have in mind. So I will go through first ways that you can win the debate, or strategies that you can adopt, and then talk about making it clear what your strategy is. So firstly, ways of winning the debate. I've noted a few broad archetypes there. So the first one here, with the lovely Walter White, is just one big harm, right? And this is pretty simple. It's just we prove one big thing in the debate, i.e. we prove that so-and-so would go to hell if they do this policy, and then you just explain it fully, and then the debate's kind of over, right? And with this strategy, you want to engage in just biting the bullet, is the thing you've got to think of, right? Whatever they've said, who cares about it? It's not as important, prove one argument. Obviously, if the other team rebuts your argument, bit of a bad time, but otherwise, going after this strategy can be really useful. So, a debate where this has happened, I've sort of noted debates down the bottom. There was a debate about essentially like this thing called the SoCal papers. Essentially, it's like, should we get this robot to write a bunch of like academic-y, jargony papers and give it to a bunch of academic journals, and then if they couldn't distinguish like absolute BS, like, you know, a Marxist analysis of how dogs in a park resemble Hitler's policies in World War II. If no one can distinguish that from like real academia, we should shut down the journals. Like that's essentially the topic. And Affirmative, essentially in this debate, get up and explain that there's a lot of scientific misinformation that is peddled by, you know, big companies or big pharmaceutical companies, and essentially what those companies do is they submit a bit of bogus and they rely on they rely on journals not being too scrupulous. And now we would have far less things like climate denial science passing muster, because we just have more stronger academic, you know, checks and balances, right? Essentially, one big harm or one big benefit, fully explained, fully characterized, fully impacted, is a good recipe of winning the debate. The second is around co-opting an opposition metric. So the debate I put here is a very famous one, probably my personal favorite debate, a very good debate, which was the semi-finals of Worlds in 2020. Where the topic is, I don't know if people have read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It's essentially, should we do that society? And Brave New World, essentially, everyone is like lab grown and has like a set function deemed to them by society, and they're bred to be really happy about that function, and they live their whole life and they don't have any agency over themselves. And Affirmative get up and explain that people, by virtue of this topic, will likely be very happy about it. Like, they'll be living very good lives, they'll be happy about what they're doing, and Negative explain that they sort of co-opt the opposition metric by explaining this would give people a profound sense of existential dread and make them deeply sad about themselves, because uncertainty and autonomy is necessary for enjoyment. So that is a way of essentially co-opting whatever the other team is trying to do. And in that case, it's very obvious why you should win, because the other team says they should win on something. So if you win on it, obviously you're going to win the debate. The third thing you can do is just have a principled argument. These are very fun, but also a bit hard to do. Essentially, explain one benefit or one principled claim, and then just explain this is very important. I think this is actually very useful in debates that are very small. So if there is a debate where there's not much like practical difference on either side, it can be really good to just like prove one big principled claim and then win the debate. The last thing you can do is just have a lot of characterization and win one very important like characterization clash that maybe affects many other clashes in the debate. So a good example I can think of this, and all of these debates are recorded, by the way, you can check them out if you'd like to, but you know, you don't have to. The last debate, the debate I can think of on this is the 2022 semi-finals of pre-Australs here at UCID, where essentially the debate is about Israeli politics. And the claim that it's from the perspective of a left-wing political party in Israel. And obviously this is before October 7th and that landscape changed. But essentially the claim that was made, the characterization claim that was made, is that these left-wing parties are going to fade out of existence and they need to act rather than die and evaporate. So it's essentially characterizing the debate as like a life or death. Your back is against the wall, you have to do the policy, you've got no other option. And that ended up proving very neatly why, like, they didn't really have to prove the policy was very good, they just had to prove you had no other choice. And in that case, it's pretty clear, again, that they should win the debate. So, that is sort of like how you might win. These are good archetypes that you can come back to. But the last thing to note is to make it clear that you've won. So you don't want to be in a position where it is unclear whether or not you're going to win the debate, or at the very least, unclear how you're attempting to win the debate. Regardless of whether or not the debate's close, etc., you want to make it evident why you should win, at least what your strategy is in the debate. And you never want to be in a position where you hear the judge misinterpret what you think that you're winning on, or what you think is very important to you. So make it very clear to the adjudicator. I think this is particularly good to do from, like, honestly, from the very beginning of your first speaker speech, or to be honest, in any of your speaker speeches, but making it clear to be like, we are going to prove this one thing, this is the most important thing in the debate, or the team that wins this debate is the team that best characterizes why X happens and gives you reasons why someone might opt into something. Is it for good reasons, in which case this is good, or bad reasons, in which case this is bad? We will just prove it is for good reasons and thus win the debate. So yeah, that's essentially the way you might try and go about winning debates and making it clear that you've won. The last thing I wanted to note is what sort of debate do we want to have? Because it is very common that you will lose a clash and still win the debate. Essentially, in a lot of cases, it is okay to trade off on something that you think will be hard to win, or that you don't know about, or the other team, thinks is very important to them. If you can win the thing that matters most in the debate, you'll still probably win. So sometimes you have to ask the question, what are we okay with losing? What sort of debate are we sort of fine with having? All right, that's an individual clash. Let's get into tournaments at large and expand to the scope of strategy when engaging in tournaments. The first thing is keep going even when things are bad. So as the dude says in the photo, don't kill yourself, you're so sexy. So essentially, keep going. Even when stuff looks bad, I think it's still very fair. The thing about losing debates is you're going to be against the team that just lost their last debate. So losing makes winning a bit easier. You don't get in your head about it. The more that you push forward, the more that you'll be in a position to win. I believe all 3 teams that broke last year at Easters for UCID lost their first debate. So all 3 did. So look, don't worry about it. It happens to the best of us. I remember coming out of my first debate at Easters last year, desperately wanted to break, desperately wanted to win at all costs. And we've got 6 debates to do, and losing the first one is huge, because you kind of have to win 5 to be sure of breaking, or at least we thought that we did. So losing the first one meant that we needed to win all 5 of the other ones. So that was relatively devastating, but again, every team that lost ended up going on to break at the tournament. So don't get in your own head, keep moving, and you'll be fine. The second thing to note is that defeats are often very useful as data. So there are sort of right questions and wrong questions to ask your adjudicator from a learning perspective. It's not no adjudicator is going to be angry if you ask them a question, but there are some questions that are more and some questions that are less useful. So the metric for what is sort of a useful thing to ask is how they interpreted your arguments. Because here is where, regardless of what they say, they're correct. Because how they interpreted your arguments is how a random fella or lady interprets your arguments, and there's no real way that you can deal with that. However they ended up doing it is what is somewhat likely to happen when you have a person. So you can ask them questions about that, and they will be able to help you. Where it is less likely that they can help you is if you ask, for example, what could we have said to win the debate? Because in a lot of cases, the answer that you'll get is just, I don't know. Because the adjudicator hasn't done the debate, because they're not thinking about it, or because you're probably pretty good and they don't know what else they could have said to win. Maybe it's just a hard debate to do. So try and focus more on how you can what you can get from them in the way that they internalize your argument, and the way that the way that you could have done it. The other thing I would flag is there will be times where you'll get adjudicators you're not happy with. The best thing to do is just to move on, right? At the end of the day, the other team also had that disadvantage of having an adjudicator that might have been mildly a little incompetent. One team's still going to win. You can still make sure it's you. Plenty of bad adjudicators have gotten the decision right, and you can coax it out. It might be a little hard, but you can absolutely still do it. The last thing I put under this is to avoid overcorrection. So a lot of times I'll see people who receive a bit of feedback in one round saying I think you should speak slower, and then the next round they speak ludicrously slowly, and the next coach tells them to speak faster. So avoid overcorrecting, trust in yourself, especially in how well you do things, and yeah, you'll probably be fine. So that's the first thing around defeats. The second thing I wanted to note is around topic selection. I think people absolutely underestimate just how pivotal topic selection is, particularly at Easters. So I've noted here, topic selection from Easters in 2023, this is round 6. So the final round, the one that's very important in determining how well you do. And here, as you can see, blue indicates AF wins, red indicates neg wins. So the bottom motion has a lot of affirmative wins. The middle motion has a lot of negative wins, and the top motion is balanced. So if both teams get a veto, if I am on side affirmative and I accidentally veto this motion, and side negative vetoes this motion, because obviously they don't want to do it, a lot of AFs will win, we're now doing a topic that is very heavily skewed to side negative, right? So the best way to stop yourself from losing is to stop the debate from being unfair before it started. And a lot of debates and rounds will be like this. There will be a motion that, if you stumble into it, might be really, really hard for your side. Take the time to think through topic selection, to prep sides, it will really pay dividends. Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to get better at topic selection?
That's also a good question. One thing I did before Easters last year was I just got up the tabs of previous Easters and like covered up the statistics and just practiced labeling 1 to 3 and just like saw how much I was right. I was right, sometimes I was wrong, but you get a bit better and you start to realize like, oh yeah, the topic that's like we should invade a country is probably a bad idea. You know, like, you get a good sense of what works and what doesn't. And yeah, so hopefully that is useful. A very important thing to think about. I don't know what the topics are for tonight, but pay attention to topic selection, it's very important. And then lastly, try to get something out of every debate. Regardless of whether or not you're going into a debate that's going to be really hard, there's still a big thing that you can get. Either, if the debate's easy, you can win, which is good. If the debate's hard, you can learn from someone who's good, which is also good. And regardless, you can practice something. So one thing that I know a lot of people sometimes do is they'll be like, look, the next 2 debates I do, I don't care how well I do, I'm just gonna make sure my introductions are good. And because I constantly get told by adjudicators, my introductions are shit, I'm gonna make them good. And so that practice can really help, because regardless of how those 2 debates do, after them, you're now quite good at introductions, and it'll make you better. So doing that can be very, very useful. Okay, that is wars. Lastly, revolutions. So strategy at majors themselves. So I'll do a very shameless plug here for Easters. So Easters is the competition we do. At Easter, it is the Australian Debating Championships. University of Sydney is famously, Joseph, University of Sydney is famously pretty good. We do very well. Last year, I guess the last 2 years we've had teams in the semi-finals. Year before that we won. Year before that we also had teams in semi-finals. USyd is particularly good at debating, but there are a lot of slots open. I believe we currently still have, like if you applied today, I think you're still almost certainly guaranteed to make your team. So come, show up. Even if you are just there to get like a mostly paid for trip to Melbourne, you don't actually care about debating, that's fine. Come, we would love to have you. You'll make friends. Like the debates I did at Easters, both the 2 years I've done it, I've become, like much more well-rounded as a debater, but also met really good friends, met nice people, and you get some free alcohol, which is really good, and feels fun. And also you'll probably win a lot of debates. Like I think we like regardless of whether or not you're feeling a bit bad about your chances, someone's going to be feeling worse about theirs. So you'll still probably do very well. And it's on at Easter, which is why we've got the like nice Andrew Scott themes hot priest there. Okay, so if you've decided you're coming, which hopefully people have, you're very welcome to coming, and you also, well, it's a pro competition, so don't be too worried if you're a novice debater or a new debater. The rules of the tournament are that there's only one pro, someone who's debated for more than 3 years per team. So you will not be facing against like a team with a combined age of like 95, which you might do at other tournaments. Not going to happen this time. So yeah, don't worry about that. If you have decided you're coming, first of all, very good decision. Here is how you can do well. So if you haven't decided on coming, you can look at tweets on the side. But if you have, here are I think 3 things that might be useful in getting a bit better. First thing that I would advise a lot of people to do is to know their team. Like a lot of Easters is really just understanding the team dynamic, learning how to work with people. And to be honest, this is the most enjoyable part if you do it right. Like you'll make really, really good friends. I know like basically all of the Easters teams last year, as well as the cohort as a whole, are now much better friends with one another than if they just never gone and like seen each other every Wednesday rather than like gone on like a proper trip where you stay with one another and you like go out on expeditions. And last year was in Brisbane, and now it gets to be in Melbourne, which I don't want to shame Brisbane. I think Melbourne's probably slightly cool. Okay, so yeah, that's the first thing. Sort out the team dynamic. There is nothing worse than a team that doesn't have set roles, doesn't have expectations. One person thinks we need to win every debate, the other person doesn't care. Just talk about it, like openly discuss. Will make you guys much more better or much better. Sit down with someone. Each team will get a mentor. Will be someone who's like slightly older. They'll help you. They can talk you through it. Sort of get that set up. Secondly, get to know which motion types you and your teammates are good at, and try and learn the ones that you like, such that you can maximize coverage. So if you don't like finance motions, but there's like a white finance bro on your team who really loves them, like that's his ballpark. Let him go have fun with those, and you can do something else, right? And maximizing coverage means that you can just like learn the stuff that you actually enjoy, which hopefully will be fun as well. Thirdly, build trust in one another, and especially a good case writing dynamic. So whoever ends up being the first speaker on the team, you want to make sure that you're really, really good at communicating with them, you understand exactly what's going on, and everyone's on the same page as to how we're going to try and win the debate. And fourthly, don't be a dickhead to your teammates. Like just be nice, and everyone will be fun. And yeah, Joseph, you got a question?
Could you provide some examples of dickhead-like behavior?
I can't possibly think of any, so I'm sorry to do that with you. But I think in general, almost every team I can think of last year became like at least for the duration of the tournament, like a little mini like family. Like my two novices were quite funny, and we would do like bits together. It was very enjoyable. I know that one team did like a karaoke event after the fact. That's silly, but in a lot of cases, teams become quite friendly. They work well with one another. But remember, part of the goal of Easters is that it is like not just to win debates, but to make friendships. So by that dot point, I mean approach it like that. Approach it as if these are great friends you can have that will really help you out. That can sort of give you a more broader view on how uni is for people that are probably doing stuff very different to you. Okay, second thing in terms of doing well at Easters in particular is remember to keep your composure in big rounds. One of the biggest, I think, differentiators between me as a little tiny baby first year and then me as like not any taller in the second year, who's like no less a baby in like everything but name, right? Is composure and confidence. Right? Like when you're a first year, it feels like it's a very big tournament. It feels like you can't possibly win a debate against someone older than you, which you very easily can. And it happens every time. So make sure that it's you and not someone else who gets to beat on the old people and make them feel shame, which is really funny. So feel composed, feel confident, go at debates, and really sort of be there to have fun and also be there to win. And then lastly, just debate one debate at a time. So Easters as a major has 6 debates. To break, you need to win 4, and then there is also this thing called the institutional cap, which I guess you'll learn about a bit later. That means that sometimes you need to get to 5 wins to break. So essentially, sometimes that can be like a daunting thing to look at. Like, we've got to win 4 out of 6 debates. That's hard. In any case, winning 4 debates is difficult. Winning 1 debate is easy, right? Like you've done it countless times. Just approach it 1 debate at a time will really break things down and make them feel more accessible, more easy, and more fun. So I'll end with this, which is, this has been a broad presentation about strategy, about how to, like tinker with all of your debating. But the quote I wanted to leave with is, you can spend an eternity trying to know how a watch works. Sometimes you just need to keep an eye on the time, right? Like sometimes the best way to get good at debating, to become strategic, is not to go through like a bunch of seminars. Just do debates, have fun, back yourself, and you will both win more and have more enjoyable debates at large. So that's it. Hopefully this has been useful, and thanks very much.